Hello, and welcome to the Biomass Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Anna Simet. I hope you are all doing well. Today, I'm here with our special guest, Matt Diaz, President and CEO of the California Forestry Association. And as you probably guessed, we're going to talk about forestry and biomass energy in California today. Matt, hello, and welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I think the best way to start the conversation today is having you tell us about yourself and the California Forestry Association.
Sounds great. So my name, as you said, is Matt Diaz. I've been working in the forestry sector in one way or the other for about 25 years now. I was a graduate from Humboldt State University in 1999 and worked in the industry in Humboldt County and Santa Cruz County for the first 13 years of my career, I suppose. And then I was successfully appointed with the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection and ultimately ran that board for about 11 years and been with CalForest for about 4. So I guess over 25 years now. It's scary to say, but that is a fact. I'm a registered professional forester. CalForest is a true blue trade association. We represent the forest product sector in California, and that comes with about 3.5 million acres of well-managed forest lands in California, along with all the primary manufacturing facilities in the state, veneer plants, biomass facilities, as well as primary manufacturing facilities and in terms of traditional lumber.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe tell us, why do you and your organization work with or support, advocate for biomass energy in California, and particularly forest waste derived energy?
So I will say this, as with any organization similar to mine, we go through an event every year that's a strategic planning event, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're looking at our needs for the individual year. And biomass in California has been a leading biomass utilization, forest waste utilization, if you will, has been a leading topic for quite some time. This year, it is our number one topic in terms of trying to make changes within the legislative space of California to open up markets for biomass utilization. And the reason why, well, if you're from California, it's easy to understand that it's pretty much focused on the necessity to remove forest waste from wildfire prevention activities as well as wildfire recovery activities. So in California, we've had anybody across the nation turns on the NBC News and anywhere in the nation, and in the summer months, you will certainly see California on fire. And that is something that we live with on an annual basis. Just this last year, it was noted in California in 2024 as being a pretty modest fire season, yet several of our members lost 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 acres of timberland. We are very, very proactive on the wildfire prevention front, but the problem being is that we're treating lots of acres, creating lots of material, and have no outlets for that material. So we're storing it on the landscape, or we're storing it in piles. And in either one of those situations, it's not working well in terms of retaining fuels on the landscape or changing our trajectory on our carbon front, if you will, because we're just releasing methane as those materials decay. So we need to build out our biomass utilization in California, and that's why we lean in so heavily.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, gosh, I don't know how many years ago it was. Jerry Brown was governor, and there was some kind of emergency proclamation to get that material to bioenergy facilities. Am I recalling that correctly?
Anna, you are dead on the money. It was 2018, and it was right after the Camp Fire, which essentially is not the, but one of the benchmarks of wildfire in California, where we lost a whole town by the name of Paradise. It resulted in 85 lives lost. And Jerry Brown was a forward thinker in his last term of governor and adopted an emergency proclamation, essentially demanding for higher rates of utilization of this material as one of the elements to combat the wildfire crisis that we're dealing with. Since then, we've made very, very limited headway. I will be very blunt about it. And it's frustrating to folks that really care about forests, forest sustainability, rural communities, airsheds, watersheds, to watch the very slow progress that we've made in California.
Mm-hmm. So, Matt, out of curiosity, what are we talking about in terms of volume that needs to be treated or removed from California forests?
So we have a state board of forestry and fire protection in California,
Mhm.
and they recently conducted a rapid assessment inventory of stored material on the landscape. And it's been widely noted as being a very conservative estimate. But at this particular juncture, I should say, as of the time of that assessment, that we have well over 1 million tons stored on the landscape, mostly in pile forms across the state, but not all.
Wow.
But more shocking, in my opinion, is the fact that at that same time that we talked about Governor Brown's drive on biomass utilization, he set a trajectory in California to treat 1 million acres a year as a means of also digging in and facing the wildfire crisis. So between our state partners, our federal partners, NGOs, private industries, we're all grappling with this 1 million acre strategy a year. We haven't quite got there. Last year, treatment numbers came in at about 2/3 of what the goal has been set at, just under 750,000 acres. But let's suggest, or let's look at, if we actually were treating that 1 million acres a year and use a conservative figure of 5,000 bone dry tons coming out of each individual acre or being stored. So you do the math and you can generate some pretty big numbers pretty quick. 1 million acres being treated, 5,000 bone dry tons an acre, or somewhere in there, let's say, as conservative estimates, and there is a huge accumulation of this material being generated on an annual basis and very limited outlets for its utilization.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's crazy. This next question's kind of two parts. So, what more is needed right now when it comes to the forestry side of the equation and harnessing that material? I did see that California has invested $2 billion in wildfire prevention over the past few years. Is that like a drop in the bucket? And then kind of tying bioenergy in here, are there enough biomass facilities to have a meaningful impact on that?
Well, you're correct that we have invested 2 billion, a little over 2 billion in fire prevention in California. And I will say that for our current administration, that also is pretty forward looking in terms of like understanding the need and supporting the various factions of landowners out there, federal, private, state, in terms of really trying to drive outcomes for fire prevention. The one piece of the puzzle is what we're talking about here, or not the one piece of the puzzle, but one of the pieces of the puzzle is this biomass utilization. We know it is indisputable that the work that we're doing in forested landscapes changes fire behavior, but we can do it better if we were able to actually mobilize those fuels that we are removing and get them off the landscape, because we know fire is going to happen. It's about when is it going to happen and at what intensity. So there's that piece of the equation that I think it's pretty amazing that California has stepped up with such large sums of investment, but it's about stretching those investments further and doing more with the resources that are allocated. The other piece of the puzzle, Anna, that I think is really important, and you'll hear a lot of folks from California talk about the need for biomass for prevention activities, but we can't set aside the fact that we have already lost millions upon millions of acres in California. And folks are readily trying to reforest, recover, either at the community level or the landscape level from these wildfires. And while we can go in and we can conduct some salvage activities and get rid of larger stems to a certain extent and that larger material, we're still leaving large sums on landscapes that are being interplanted. And so for the purposes of resiliency and recovery actions, we also need biomass outlets so that we can get all the larger fuels off the landscape and replant, if you will, so that when the next fire hits, it's not burning those replanted stands at such a high intensity because we have 10, 100,000-hour fuels left on the landscape. The question that you asked about biomass facilities, we do not have enough. And in fact, if you look at the trajectory of the facilities in California, the numbers have continued to drop, when in fact, we know that we need to be mobilizing in the other direction.
Yeah, I know. A lot of them over time have closed due to economic reasons. I do know there are a slate of small scale projects, I believe, that will use forest waste too. But what's the biggest challenge in all of this?
It's scale. I mean, it really comes down to what is the scalable opportunities. What opportunities can we see and envision in the near future that represents scale of utilization of this material? You're right in that there are partners out there that are looking at trying to use material for biochar outlets and for other alternative co-benefits, if you will. But from the perspective of scale, the only true, tried and true, and economically feasible, scalable piece that I've seen that's happening here in the near future, or has an opportunity to impact here in the near future, is the cogeneration or the generation facilities that are using wood waste and creating energy. In the long term, I think that there's other opportunities, but that takes innovation and it takes incubation of new industries. And so far in California, we have not done a good job of that. So we look at opportunities like sustainable aviation fuel or pyrolysis producing hydrogen. These are all real opportunities, but we have not incubated those industries well at all. They're very difficult in California to launch. And we know that we have facilities that are generating electricity from combustion, management of steam through boilers, and creating energy as a co-benefit. And that's what we need to lean on in the short time. We need to build that out so that we can build the bridge to something bigger, brighter, and scalable into the future.
So, Matt, in an article that you wrote a couple years ago, you talked about how the California legislature and the governor needed to support and expand all existing biomass facilities and programs in the state while embracing ongoing research and development of new technologies that will support removal of hazardous fuels from forests. Then you say, quote, "If not, the writing is on the wall. We are setting up California for the next wildfire catastrophe and will continue to lose forests and the communities within the forested portions of the state." I mean, the writing was on the wall, indeed. And that was in 2023. So
yeah, the writing's on the wall to this day. And I mean, we are, like I said, we set our strategy this year to try to effectuate change in our legislature this year so that we can erase that white writing from the wall. But as we sit right now, the writing is on the wall, and every single year we experience it again. We just had these fires in Southern California, and I'm not going to suggest that biomass utilization would have been a tremendous driving factor in challenging that particular situation, but it raises the conversation of wildfire in California once again. I've been operating in this space for years now, really championing the idea that we have got to do something, because doing nothing does not work. And we have been doing very little, nibbling around the edges at best on this issue. And every single year we continue to lose another community or another million acres. And you could rattle them off: Paradise, Santa Cruz, outskirts of Santa Cruz, outskirts of Santa Rosa, outskirts of Weed, California, Greenville, Grizzly Flats, one after another. And so the writing is on the wall, and we really need to harness this as part of our overall toolbox to combat wildfire in California. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So, Matt, in our industry, we frequently encounter organizations who they largely seem like they don't want any trees cut down ever. They're not foresters, but they are loud voices. As a registered professional forester, particularly one who lives in California, what do you say to this argument?
Well, first of all, I would say the argument that there's a spectrum of vision as it relates to forest management everywhere in the nation and in California. That is not, we're not exempt from that at all. But what I will say is that the general populace of California over my 25 years the middle ground is much brighter on this issue than it has been in the past. It was very divisive in the past. You were on this side of the equation or this side of the equation. And I work with every day. I work with conservation groups. I work with you name it. It doesn't matter. Utilities. It doesn't really matter. Everybody understands, for the most part. I shouldn't say everybody, but the greatest majority of folks understands that forest management is something that has to happen in order to help us ameliorate this crisis that we're facing. So from my perspective, I feel like I'm relatively pleased that the messaging that we have been trying to permeate the general masses across California and beyond are actually understanding and hearing the message. And it was not long ago that I could go into San Francisco Bay Area and speak to a group of individuals, and they would say, never touch a tree anywhere at any time. And I go talk to those same voices today, and they're like, how do we really get this done well and in a thoughtful way? We understand that management has to happen. We support it, Matt. How can we support you get this done in a thoughtful way? So we're in a different paradigm than we were 20, 15, 30 years ago. And I think that we have an opportunity to really make progress here in the short term.
That's awesome to hear. So what would you say right now is your organization's number one priority?
Our organization's number one priority for this year is to open up markets for biomass utilization in California. To try, very similar to, I think it was an op-ed that you were quoting there that I wrote in 2023. Yep. We need to open markets. We need to allow some level of market drive the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, because without that, we are going to face the same problems that we continually face every year. So our number one push this year is to work with all of our partners, all of the voices that are interested in forest health and in resiliency in California, interested in supporting rural communities and rural economics, and open up biomass markets in California.
Oh, this has been such a good conversation, and I know that we could continue for quite a long time, Matt, but we'll wrap up. But before we do, is there anything else that you want to add related to this conversation?
I don't think so. I mean, it's always pleasing to, be asked questions and be able to respond. And it's really great to be able to be here with you and your team. And I appreciate the opportunity. And if an opportunity arises in the future, I'll, reach out and I'll be happy to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to revisit this, 6 months or a year from now. And I would love to do that.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt, for coming on to the podcast. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. Until next time.